That's us live. That's us live, thank you.
Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Economy and Resources Committee. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our Council's website. Can I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off their video when not addressing the meeting. For those of you attending virtually who wish to contribute to any item, please write "speak" in the Teams chat function and you will be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we deal with the business as efficiently as possible. I will allow enough time to ensure that any members attending via the chamber in English Street are also able to have their request to speak logged, so that I'm scrupulously fair to all participating, regardless of the method by which you are participating. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or alternatively write "leave" in the Teams chat function and then join when you're able to rejoin us. This is required to allow us to record member presence. And please do not use the chat function for any contributions that are material to debates. Clearly not every member will necessarily be able to see it. We have several important reports to consider today. I anticipate we will deal with the business in our usual efficient manner. Not the first time that I have chaired a hybrid meeting remotely, so we'll make every effort to ensure that members are able to participate, whether attending in person or online.
I'll just put my hand up.
Thanks, Ronnie. Do you want to speak, Ronnie?
No, I was just answering your question. I'll put my hand up, when I want to speak.
Yeah, I think that's right, Ronnie. If you just tell Claire that you want to speak, and then Claire will tell Rob.
That's the plan. Yes, absolutely. Claire, can I just check that you're ready for that?
Yes, of course, Chair. Thank you.
Perfect, Claire. Thanks very much. Absolutely. Okay, item 1 is the Sedran apologies and a Chair's approval of members' remote participation. Claire, can you provide the Sedran and any apologies, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. We've got one apology today from Councillor Hislop. We have 4 members in the Council Hall, being Councillors Martin, Nicholson, Sloan and Thompson. Currently, we have a number of members not present, being Councillors Ian Crothers, Councillor Fairbairn, Giusti, McClelland, Marshall, Tate and Wood. All others present on Teams.
Apologies for Councillor Marshall, Chair.
Thanks, Claire. Thank you, Archie. Okay, I approve of members' remote participation, as you might anticipate. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make, please? Okay, I'll take it there are none. Item 3 is the minute of the meeting of 15th June 2021. Can we approve that minute, please?
Approved.
Thank you, members. Item 4 is the draft South of Scotland Regional Economic Strategy Consultation Response. Report is by Head of Economy and Development. This report provides a proposed response to the public consultation on the South of Scotland Draft Regional Economic Strategy. The development of the strategy has been led by the South of Scotland Regional Economic Partnership and supported by this Council. In June, we received the draft strategy at full Council and agreed then to delegate to this committee to respond to the consultation as we are asked to do today. A member seminar was held last week, which I thought was very helpful actually and constructive, which has helped to develop the consultation response. And members' comments and views have been updated in the appendix, which I know has been circulated both electronically and in hard copy. I trust therefore all members now have sight of it. Steve Rogers is here to assist if members have any questions. Steve, is there anything that you wish to add at this point?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. No, Chair, there's nothing to add at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. So with that, I will go to members' questions and comments. In the first instance, I think on the generality of the report, and then what I would propose to do is to go through the sections of the appendix in order. For members that attended the seminar, they'll be familiar with that. We took each theme in turn. So I would propose that we do that. But in the first instance, if there are any general questions and points before we take the individual themes in turn, then let's take those now. Archie.
Yeah, I would agree, you, Rob. The seminar was very useful last week, and there was a few amendments and additions to that particular the strategy moving forward. I'd also add that the Economic Leadership Group put their strategy consultation process forward and fits very well with what we're trying to do here. I think you know, having private and third sector organisations also put into the regional economic strategy response is a useful thing, and I think it fits in very well with what we're actually trying to do here, just to advise that, Chair.
Archie, thanks very much. And I think it is really important that we have the widest possible breadth of feedback on the strategy. I think if the strategy is to be a success, it really does rely on having a broad base of support right across Dumfries and Galloway and Scottish borders indeed. I will pause in case there are any further observations on the report and the strategy as a whole. And if there are not, then we'll move on to the appendix itself. Okay, so in that case, we will go on to the appendix and to the first page of the appendix, which I have as page 7 in the hard copy. And on the two sections being vision and our challenges and opportunities. And you will see the council response to both below each on that page. Can I invite any comments, observations or questions on any of that first page, please? Okay, I will take it then that we are content with that first page. The second, being page 8 of the hard copy, has both the strategic framework and then theme 1 with the responses, the proposed responses to both beneath that. Can I invite any comments on either the strategic framework itself or on the council's proposed response to theme 1? Archie, do you want to come in this one?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's just something just popped into my head, and obviously one of the things is building lifelong learning and opportunity. And I'm just wondering if for Steve, if there's been any discussion with the college and university up at the Dumfries campus.
Thanks, Archie. Steve, can you help with that one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, yes, through the Regional Economic Partnership, the college are fully engaged and have been fully engaged both in the development of the draft strategy and also through the subgroup of the REP that has oversight of the skills and education that's driving forward the regional skills investment plan. So both the college and also the FE establishments and HE establishments up at the Crichton are fully engaged in that process, Archie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I think that is helpful clarification. I invite any further comments or points on the first theme. Claire, just double check everyone in the chamber's happy.
Oh, we've got Councillor Thompson like to come in.
Thanks, Claire. Sorry, I'm having a wee bit of trouble.
Carry on.
Yep, I'm having a wee bit of trouble with my connection, so I can't really access the chat in Teams to put in chat. So if you forgive me for that just now. Just on theme 1, skilled and ambitious people, I notice in the response it talks about just the language around talented and the tension between that and ensuring that we're being properly inclusive. So I think maybe what we're really saying is we want to attract and retain people who will help serve the ambitions of the regional economic strategy. And that would cover everybody who can help us towards those goals across the region. So I don't know if there's been further thought about the wording for that. Because we don't want to get to a point where it ends up being meaningless and we're not clear about what we're trying to do or who we're trying to retain and attract. So I'm just wondering if there's any further comment on that from Steve or whoever's putting the submission together.
Thanks, Stephen. I mean, this certainly has been something that has been reflected on at the rep, I think it would be fair to say. Steve, any further observations on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We can certainly provide an additional sentence on the end there in terms of that suggestion that Councillor Thompson made there in terms of how that should be framed. The final wording will be a matter that goes in front of the next meeting of the Regional Economic Partnership itself, but we'll certainly feed that back as part of our consultation. I think as you say, the key point there is about retaining that inclusive approach that's reflected elsewhere in the draft strategy, and ensuring through the wording that appears in this theme that we're not, as a region, excluding anybody that would otherwise be able to contribute to the aims and objectives of the strategy. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Steve, I should say, rather. Stephen, I hope that's helpful.
Yes, and appreciate it's difficult finding the right words sometimes. I think the use of the word talented as well is could be seen as a sort of pejorative, almost like saying, well, we don't have enough talented people here. So I think we have to be careful about what we're actually saying and what we're trying to achieve. So I think, yeah, just maybe a bit more care about that, about what the implications of the language are. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. I think we understand your point. I'll go to Jim McComb next, please. Jim.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a follow-up to what Stephen was saying. I feel we need to attract and retain people right across the skills spectrum. Talented or less talented, everyone has their place in the economic picture. That inclusive is really what we should be aiming for. So it's basically just a restatement of what Stephen was saying.
I do agree with that. I think that both of you make a very fair point, and I'm pleased it is reflected in the second paragraph of our response, because we wish to attract people to our region. Actually, the greatest challenge we face is depopulation. We may run out, but we may not have sufficient working age people to really boost the economy in the way that we would wish. So I think being cautious about how that is reflected. I would say, I think, in fairness to the other side of the argument, I guess, was that there was an interest in demonstrating the ambition of the region, and maybe reflecting that we recognise that everybody has their own talents and abilities and contribution to make. But I do take the point that it could be misinterpreted, and I think that what we've said in our second paragraph to the response is good in that regard, and I think I'm taking it that we do have general support for that. So I'll invite any further comments on theme 1. Okay then, members, so with that we'll go to page 9 and theme 2, innovative and enterprising. Can I invite any comments, points or questions on theme 2, please, on our response to theme 2? appears then that we're broadly content with a response to theme 2, which I think is...
Sorry, Chair, Councillor Thompson would like to come in.
Okay, no problem. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks again. I think, again, it's just to be consistent, I suppose, but it does talk about how we sort of attract talent and young people. I think, you know, as long as we're getting the right people to help us achieve our goals of whatever age, not to be too sort of discriminatory about it. Obviously, it'd be nice to have a sense that young people are attracted here, but equally, even just retaining young people because there's opportunities here, or, you know, I think we could sort of hang ourselves out to dry if we're trying to do things that aren't realistic, and when really all we need is to deliver a better economic area with people of working age, with the right abilities and capabilities. So again, it's maybe just about the language.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Archie?
Yeah, it's on the same point here. I remember many years ago when I was a trade unionist, I used to fight with Prospect. We used to worry about the word if and when in documents and things like that. But I think in this one, if it says including retaining and attracting talent, that would cover the situation.
I think that sounds like a good idea to me. Any further comments on... Sorry, Steve, you want to come in on that?
No, Chair, I was just going to say that if members wish that additional word retaining and to be added in, then we'll do that.
I think unless there are any firm views to the contrary, I think we should do that. That would seem sensible to me. I'll pause to check in case we have any further points on theme 2. Okay. Claire, everyone in the chamber okay?
All okay, Chair, thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Okay, then we will move on to theme 3, rewarding and fair work, page 10 of the hard copy. Can I invite points on the proposed response to theme 3, please? Councillor Thompson? Sorry, Stephen, on you go.
Yeah, I don't want to hog this because obviously other people will be wanting to come in with their comments, but just again, I think it's if we're, I mean, I agree with this, but I think that if we're talking about fair, secure and well-paying work, I think obviously we need to be consistent about how that ties into maybe later items in this agenda, because obviously it makes no sense to sort of put this forward as our key value and then, you know, have that challenged at a later item in the same paper, in the same set of papers. So I'm just sort of thinking of green ports and whatnot, which we'll come on to later. But I would say this is a fair representation, I hope, of what we'd like to achieve.
Certainly, I think it's a principle that should underpin everything that that we want to do. You know, it has been, I think, quite a long time that Dumfries and Galloway has been, you know, either first or second in the league table of lowest average earnings in mainland Scotland, and you know that's not a place that we want to stay. I have to say. So I think you know, rewarding and fair work is absolutely critical. Should underpin what we are trying to achieve. Malcolm, you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just more or less backing up what you were saying earlier. You beat me to it with the retention issue. So I'm pleased that's dealt with, and I do appreciate Councillor Thompson picking up on the slight inconsistency between this paper and further agenda items. But the big issue in Dumfries and Galloway, as I've said repeatedly, is the value added issue from our businesses, which is particularly what drives wages down. We have too many businesses and low value added, and improving that the route to rewarding and fair work. And as part of the strategy, I fully support it.
Thanks, Malcolm. No, I think it's a helpful observation. Can I invite any further comments on theme 3, please? Check in with colleagues in the chamber, Claire.
No further comments here, Chair.
That's grand. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll move to theme 4 on page 11, cultural and creative excellence, and invite any comments on the proposed response to theme 4, please. Katie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's really welcome this opportunity to go through this. Obviously, we're going to be coming back at full council to get the full submission approved again. But just in terms of the cultural and creative excellence theme, I think it's really important, and apologies, it's not been sort of captured within the response, and it wasn't something that I raised previously, but I think it's really important to just highlight the creative industry as a whole. So we talk, in our response about our investment in events for the sector, but I think it's really important that we can acknowledge that Dumfries and Galloway has a really thriving and active arts culture. And there's many individual makers and artists that are choosing Dumfries and Galloway to be their home, and how we can support them and how they are supported by this. Because the arts industry, and it is the creative industry, not just events industry, is actually hugely valuable to the region. And I would just like to see that somehow captured in the response, if that's possible at all. I don't know if Steve wants to come back with a suggestion on that one, but I do think it's important to try and capture that whole industry and not just the events, because frankly, if we don't have our makers and artists and musicians that are choosing to live and make the region as wonderful as it is, we won't be able to have the events, essentially.
Katie, I do think it's a really fair point, and we're right to make much of the significance of the events that take place in the region and our council's support for them, which I think is really important. But I think you're also absolutely right that there is the whole ecosystem of artists and makers who live here that makes the region such a good place to hold these events in the first place. So I do think it is important. Steve, can we look at maybe how we can incorporate that into the response, please?
Chair, yes, certainly happy to add an additional paragraph just highlighting that particular point. The draft strategy as it currently stands does recognise the particular role that creative industries play. I think in theme 4 within the text of the draft strategy, it does refer to the desire to position culture and creative industries at the heart of our thriving economy. But perhaps in our specific response as an organisation, we should highlight the particular strengths that we have in Dumfries and Galloway in terms of the creative sector. Happy to add a suitable paragraph, Chair.
Certainly, I think that we should, and I'm looking for, I hope, broad general agreement that that's a fair reflection. Are we any other comments, whether it's specifically on that or on the rest of our response to theme 4? Jim.
Thanks, Chair. I take the point that we are well supported by Event Scotland, but is it wise to include the percentage figure? Other regions may well cotton on to that and start shouting for a smaller proportion to go to Dumfries and Galloway.
I do take the point. I mean, clearly this is a public meeting and these are public documents, so I think the cat is out of the bag to an extent. Steve, have you any observation on that, please?
Chair, thank you. I think the inclusion of that was just to underline the significance of the events sector to our local economy, and basically to show that we're starting from a good position in terms of punching above our weight when it comes to hosting major events, and that provides a real good economic opportunity for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Jim, and thank you, Steve. I do appreciate the point. And I suspect probably those who are bidding for support from Event Scotland will do their own maths. I think, and I think the other side of the coin is something about celebrating success as well, which is important. That's not the same as being self-congratulatory, but I think recognising there's a lot of good stuff happening is really important, particularly for those who are organising it. Can I go to Archie next, please?
Thanks very much, Chair. I was just going to say the same thing about celebrating success. We always get told that we don't jump up and down enough about what we actually do in Dumfries and Galloway, and I think advertising how good we actually are at this particular space, considering it's 10%. At the end of the day, it's 10%, which we have worked hard to get, and ensure that the people in Dumfries and Galloway get the benefit from that. So celebrating the success is exactly what I was going to say.
Thanks, Archie. So I'll pause to check in case there are any further comments.
I think Malcolm wants to come in.
Oh, sorry. Malcolm, sorry, you want to come back in?
No, thanks. It's actually just to support Katie on including the wider industry, the creative industry, and it's all part of destination building, which is crucial, and it's driving a lot of the other aspects in it, even with the the place-based programme and everything else. It all links in well. All our small independent creative and makers contribute a great deal to the economy locally, and they bring in an awful lot of people. So I would fully support adding that paragraph.
Thanks, Malcolm. Yes, I agree with that. I think I'm picking up, I think, general support for including a point, a paragraph on that point, which I think would be helpful. So, any final comments on our response to theme 4? Claire, anyone from the chamber?
No, Chair, thank you.
Okay. So thanks all for that. So we are, I think, content with this, but want to include a paragraph on the contribution of the cultural and creative industry, artists, makers, etc. in the region, and I'm sure we can task officers with doing that. Okay, so moving on to to theme 5 on page 12 of the hard copy, green and sustainable economy. Any questions, observations, or comments on our response to theme 5? Dougie.
Thanks, Chair. I particularly support the sort of paragraph in relation to adapting the first bullet point to add enhancing. I think that's really important. Natural capital is hugely important to our region and our pursuit of net zero, and I'm thinking of forestry and peatlands here, and carbon sequestration. And I think it does reflect the new strategic priority and the 12-point plan. So I'm supportive of that. I think we could maybe say a wee bit more in that paragraph about the value of natural capital, and making sure that when we're pursuing the economic benefits for the region, which there are plenty of, it shouldn't be at the expense of our natural capital, which is, as I said, hugely important to the direction of travel we're on. Thanks, Chair.
Dougie, thanks for that. Steve, any observations on that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And certainly the inclusion of a slight change of emphasis there is what we're suggesting in terms of that enhancing, as well as just managing and preserving. And I think the importance of natural capital is something that's come across both in terms of the draft strategy itself and the references elsewhere in the draft strategy to the importance of natural capital. And it was also, I think, reflected in a lot of the comments and feedback that was received as part of the early engagement that was done by the partnership in developing the draft strategy. But I'm certainly happy to strengthen that up by including an additional sentence to reflect that comment that Councillor Campbell made there.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, I think that would be helpful. Thank you for that. Can I invite any further comments on our response to theme 5? Anyone from the Chamber?
Councillor Thompson in the hall.
Thanks, Claire. Carry on, Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. It's just on the wording about the fuel poverty. So in the second paragraph, just at the end, I think just care about the wording because it's a wee bit ambiguous. It says, however, it's vital to ensure that people on the lowest incomes are supported throughout the introduction of new sources of power, which can in some circumstance worsen the levels of fuel poverty experienced in this rural area. I think what we're trying to say is it's vital to ensure that people on the lowest incomes are supported through the introduction of new sources of power, perhaps, which will help prevent fuel poverty. I don't think we're trying to worsen fuel poverty by introducing new sources of power. So I think maybe again just about the sense of the sentence.
I do take them. Thanks, Stephen. Steve, can you assist with that?
Yeah, I think there is a typo in there in that should read through, and we'll check the sense of that sentence just to make sure that it's not saying the opposite to what we intended.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Steve. Okay. Any further comments on our response to theme 5? We do have two, we have an amendment and a sense check there, I think, if I've reflected that correctly. Okay, thanks everybody. Then we'll move to the final theme, theme 6, page 14 of the hard copy, thriving and distinct communities. Can I invite any comments or observations on the proposed response to theme 6, please? Claire, anyone from the Chamber?
No, Chair, thank you.
I take it then that we are content with theme 6. Or just to be absolutely certain. Okay, thanks, members. Well, with that, we'll turn to the recommendations. We have certainly at 2.1 considered in detail the Council's response. We've suggested some amendments which offer suitable action for us. So are we content, therefore, to agree that the response, as detailed in the appendix and subject to the amendments that we've agreed this morning, be submitted to the Regional Economic Partnership? I'll take it that we are. And can we note 2.2 that a finalised consulted South of Scotland Regional Economic Strategy will be presented to the full Council at its meeting on 23rd September 2021 for approval? I take it we can note that. Excellent. Members, thank you very much. That's an important piece of work. And Steve, thanks for your input and assistance. If we can turn to item 5, which is Council Health and Safety Arrangements, and the report is by the Head of People and Transformation. This report updates members on revisions to the Council's health and safety arrangements and organisation, which are built on lessons learned through our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. These revisions seek to build and enhance our health and safety resources, knowledge and expertise, and how these are delivered across the whole Council. Mike Shepley and Stuart Clanahan are both present to assist if members have any questions. Welcome both. Is there anything that you'd like to add to the report before we go to questions?
Nothing, Chair, only to say also we have Dave Mitchell joining us this morning as well, our Principal Health and Safety Advisor, for any, should we say, most slightly technical questions around health and safety that Stuart and I can't manage.
Thanks for that, Mike. Welcome, Dave. Thank you for attending. I'll go then to members' questions and comments, and to Archie first, please.
Yeah, thanks, yeah, thanks, Mike, for the report. And obviously, we do need to move on with health and safety when we learn these lessons over, the pandemic and the amount of time that we've actually been there. There are a couple of questions that were raised during the pre-meeting with the administration group, and one of them was obviously the responsibility and accountability of elected members as part of the health and safety arrangements within the council's health and safety management system. At the start of this 5-year thing, we sent some elected members on IOSH managing safely for elected members course, which I think it was about 4 hours up at Cargan Bridge. And I just wanted to make sure that when we move forward after, we're in our final year of the 5-year system here, that members are aware of their responsibilities and accountabilities, by ensuring that in the future that there'll be training available for members so that they understand their accountabilities when it comes to making strategic decisions within committees.
Yep. Chair, if I may respond back to Councillor Driver, I think it is fair to say that we all acknowledge that the health and safety is everybody's responsibility across the organisation, and therefore, with regards to all the staff groups and the elected member groups, and indeed others who work on behalf of the council in other capacities, that we will ensure that they are all appropriately trained and suitably qualified to ensure that both the detail of contained within this report and the new model, but also that our culture is appropriate for one of keeping people safe whilst they carry out their duties, whatever those may be, on behalf of and across the council.
I think yes would have been easier to answer.
So I think also, just perhaps to take that a step further, that this is one committee of the council, but clearly there is that collective responsibility. So depending on the outcome of our decision on this item, it might be helpful for us to ensure that, or for Mike to ensure that all members know what the new system is. I'm sure that can be done by means of a briefing note or similar. Recognising that there will be a requirement for training of whoever is either returned or elected for the first time in only a matter of months. Okay, I think that's helpful. Thanks, Archie. Thanks, Mike. I'll go to Katie next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the point that I wanted to raise has been answered, because yes, we have a collective responsibility. My understanding is health and safety is a mandatory training course, and I think myself and Councillor Ingalls, who's on the call today, actually had our training in the Macmillan Halls. So yeah, I think it's really important that all members just get a briefing note. I appreciate that our diaries are so incredibly full at the moment for seminars, etc. So a briefing note would be good in terms of this, because there's no mention of the unions within the report, and I understand that we have legal responsibilities of working with them to ensure that we are following all the legislation, etc. So I was wondering if I could get a comment back from officers on that, please.
Stuart.
Yeah, happy to come back in on that, Chair, if that's okay. Yeah, work with the unions very closely on all health and safety matters, as you would expect of officers, and indeed on the proposals We engage regularly with trade unions through Joint Safety Committee discussions, and also we have interim planning meetings on specific health and safety matters. So fully endorse continuing to and listening to all trade union views around health and safety, and indeed through the COVID learning experience there was incredibly close working relationships and support provided by the trade unions to ensure that we were actually meeting those statutory requirements.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just come back, it would be useful to capture some of that within the report, and unfortunately it's not being captured anywhere, and I do wonder whether there's an opportunity to just even put in another noting recommendation to capture what you've just said there, because I think it is important that we've got that really firm down so that elected members can feel confident that all we're doing what we need to do, so to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Katie. I'll turn to Malcolm next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, a single leadership model sounds a much better way of operating with us. I like the fact that I'm assuming that will help to make sure we're singing off the same song sheet across the entire organisation. And getting down to just a wee question on surprise budget 311. I'm assuming that the transfer of the budget from the various directorates is enough to resource this properly.
Thanks, Malcolm.
Thanks, Councillor Johnston. Absolutely, we've taken the model as was, and we're creating much more synergy and efficiency through the new model, and there's no proposal or requirement to add into that at this point in time.
Thank you for that. I know in my own experience with handling health and safety and other organisations that you do need, in my opinion, a single point of contact ultimately to make it work. So I welcome this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm, and thank you, Stuart, for the clarification as well. We'll go to Stephen next, please.
Thanks, Chair. Sort of in part related to Councillor Hagman's point, obviously, we have a couple of members here sit on the Joint Safety Committee, and I don't think this report sort of come to that committee in this form anyway, so it would be helpful to know that, that trade unions have, or staff representatives as well, have been consulted. It doesn't say that in the governance assurance, and I'm also sort of wondering about the impact assessment, which I'm not sure if that's complete yet. So normally when we get a report, all these things have been done, so it would just be helpful to get a wee update on that as well. And happy to support articulating and making explicit the fact that trade unions have in fact been consulted, because they're not mentioned once in the document, so you wouldn't want to assume anything, eh? Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. On the impact assessment point, can either of you assist with that?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, happy to come back on that. The impact assessment has been completed and is uploaded on the relevant council website, and the responses across the board, as would be fairly obvious, is there's 2 positive impacts and 11 no impacts, and 0 negative impacts. And again, that document is available and can be viewed publicly. And obviously, taking the point forward in terms of the trade union, this report in this form hasn't been discussed in this way at the Joint Safety Committee, although we have had discussions around the COVID learning and the proposed way forward. But I'm more than happy to integrate some of the assurances that members are looking for within any of the recommendations.
Thanks, Stuart. That would be really helpful.
Yes, I think that is helpful. So we will deal with that when we turn to the recommendations. Before we do that, however, Jim McComb, you're next, please.
Thanks, Chair. I recognise that the new structure improves knowledge sharing and consistency of practice, but does it enhance the connection with directorates?
Chair, if I may, and Stuart may wish to also comment as well. Thank you for the question, Councillor McCollum. It is our belief that it does strengthen the leadership around health and safety, and indeed we will continue to look at the connected links between the various health and safety committees and the joint health and safety committee, but equally all those roads lead into feeding into SLT and the directors of each of the directorates. So we do believe that yes, it does and will look to strengthen the leadership around health and safety across the council.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you, Mike. Let me just pause to check whether we have any final comments or questions. Claire, can I check in with colleagues in the chamber as well? I see Councillor Thompson got its connection working. I'll check with the others.
Okay. No other comments here. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Claire. Okay, in that case, we will turn to the recommendations, members. So at 2.1, we are asked to note the current approach to delivery of health and safety across the council. That's as detailed at paragraphs 3.7 and 3.8. Are we content to note that? At 2.2, we're asked to note the approach adopted to respond to COVID-19 and the consolidation of health and safety resource under a single leadership model. That's as detailed at paragraphs 3.9 to 3.20. Are we content to note that? Okay. At 2.3, we're asked to note the lessons learned and benefits of the implementation of the new approach. That's as detailed at paragraph 3.21. Stuart, I wonder whether this might be the appropriate place in which to include a further note of the liaison with trade unions, staff reps, etc., in terms of the implementation of the new approach. Would that be?
Happy to do that, Chair.
I think that's the right point in the flow of recommendations to include that. So if members are content that we do that, okay. Sorry,
can I add? Yeah, sorry. Just looking at the particular wording for that is in 2.3 would be note the lessons learned, benefits of the implementation of the new approach to detail 3.1, and note the partnership working with the trade unions and future. And a future presentation will be made at Joint Health and Safety Committee on this.
That seems reasonable to me. Everyone content with that? I take it that we are. Okay. And then at 2.4, we're asked to endorse the new approach as the future delivery model for professional health and safety advice and support for the council, and that's as detailed at paragraphs 3.22 to 3.25. I'll take it that we are content with that. That's good. Mike, Stuart, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
A good report and a good piece of work. Thank you both.
Thank you.
So we'll move members to item 6, which is the Greenport Southwest Euro Gateway. And this report is by Director of Economy and Resources. We are provided with an update on the opportunity to bid for Greenport status for the ports of Cairnryan, and also asked to approve progressing to a formal bid once a formal bidding process is announced. This report builds on our earlier considerations regarding the development of free ports and green ports, and our agreement that we would be updated on the opportunity to consider submitting a formal bid as that opportunity arises. Steve Rogers is here to assist if members have any questions. Steve, have you anything to add to the report before we go to questions and comments?
Thank you, Chair. No, there's nothing to add to the report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Steve. So with that, we'll go to members' questions and comments. Malcolm, you want to go first? Hi, Malcolm, you there? And potentially.
Sorry about that, Chair. I'm having a bit of issue here.
No problem. We can hear you fine now. Carry on.
I normally use two devices, one for speaker, one for. Unfortunately, during the recess, I would appear to have forgot my login details, so I need to have a bit of a visit. It's actually just an update on how this is actually progressing. I had a conversation with the Secretary of State, Alistair Jack, at the start of the week on the state of finalising where this is going with regards to free ports and green ports, and there seems to be a bit of a discussion to be had for the final outlook or the final position or the way these things will appear. So at the moment, I'm thinking with item 2. The recommendation 2.4. I mean, I support the whole idea of this. Perhaps with I don't know if this is what Councillor Tolson was referring to earlier. 3.4, when it's got pay the real living wage, and the Dumfries and Galloway Council's not a real living wage employer. We are a living wage employer. I can see that being a bit of a hurdle. So, in any way we go forward, how adaptive is our bidding process going to be, depending on what the final agreement is and when are we liable to get the final agreement?
So, I mean, having not had recent conversation with the Secretary of State, you will undoubtedly have a better idea, perhaps, with those last two questions than we do. I take it, I think that we are preparing a bid on the basis of what we understand there to be at the moment. So clearly, expressions of interest have been invited for green ports. That's where we're at this point. If that changes, then I think we have to bring a paper back to the next nearest committee, or indeed have a special committee to reassess where we've got to and what we want to do next. I think that's probably the most sensible way to go forward, and certainly, I have no difficulty with us doing that, so that members are fully informed about how things are developing and what we want to do in response to them. I think that's probably quite a sensible way forward. But I think in terms of the details, Steve, I don't know if there's anything further that you would like to add. Maybe before Malcolm wants to come back in. Steve?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's really just to say that in response to the opportunity to put forward a bid which has still yet to be formally confirmed by Scottish Government, we have no as officers, we have no indication from the civil servants in terms of what the timescale for that is. However, what we have been doing, and again, this is something that Scottish Government have kind of really advised us to do, is to look both at the draft Green Ports guidance that the Scottish Government has issued, and also the Free Ports Prospectus, which is a much more detailed document that was launched to guide the bidding process in England and Wales when that was launched earlier in the year. So we're mindful of the need to really to follow both sets of guidance, because it's quite clear that whatever the final version of guidance is that's agreed by Scottish Government has got to incorporate really significant chunks of the UK Freeport guidance. And the Green Port guidance itself is very much based on what was contained in the UK Government's Freeport prospectus. So from our point of view, I think in response to the point that Councillor Johnson was raising, I think we are well positioned in terms of developing that bid to be sufficiently flexible to adjust the bid should the need arise to meet the requirements of whatever new kind of final guidance is issued. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. Welcome. You want to come back?
Yeah. Thank you for that, Steve. That's exactly the answer I was hoping for. So, I mean, if we are successful with this, it could only be good for Stranraer, and I think it would be very beneficial for the region.
Thanks, Malcolm. Yes, I'm very encouraged by the scale and the variety of private sector partners that are interested in being part of this bid if we are able to take it forward. These are very significant companies and organisations, without a doubt. And the fact that they're interested in the prospects that Cairnryan and the west of the region may have is, I think, a real potential vote of confidence in what we might be able to achieve. So I want to go to Katie next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would like to agree with your summary there that obviously it is a changing landscape, and we're now looking at green ports. We have in the past looked at free ports, and the landscape is changing, so to speak, on this one. I mean, I really welcome us going forward in terms of green ports because, and Councillor Thompson made reference to it, in terms of the economic strategy. We've just agreed that actually rewarding fair work is one of our key priorities, and green and sustainable economy is also high up on there. And unfortunately, these issues are missing from free ports. They're not mentioned in there. And I think it would be to the benefit of the people of Dumfries and Galloway that we wholeheartedly support the idea of a green port. Now, if green ports are not going to be going forward for whatever reason in the future, I think it's really important that we get a paper coming back as to how are we going to ensure that, there is these caveats built into the free port model, so to speak, because there is concern that there's no trade union recognition within free ports. There's no minimum wages or living wages or real living. There's just nothing in there in terms of a free port, and that would be really damaging to our economy. I do completely agree. So I think, I really welcome this report, and I think if it doesn't go forward for whatever reason, I think it's imperative that we have another report coming back, as you suggest, Chair, perhaps even a special meeting to discuss a way forward. But I really welcome this, and thank you. And I'm really pleased that we are tying it in with the economic strategy. It's good news. It's collaboration. Let's work together. Let's make sure we get a really positive outcome on this. So thank you.
Thanks, Katie. I think that we would want to have an opportunity to consider where we've got to, depending on what happens and where we go with the decisions which are certainly not within our direct control. When the facts change, we necessarily have to examine whether we still wish to do what we previously set out to, or whether we want to alter what our plans are. But the detail of that always has to wait until we see what we're working with. So. And clarity, I think, we would probably all agree, whether we favour green ports or free ports, clarity on what's going to happen next would actually be very helpful. Can I turn to Stephen next, please? And then I have Archie followed by Elaine. Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. So I suppose it's one of these ones where you can aim high or you can aim low. And obviously I think we've set out the values that we have in the region in terms of our economic strategy and the direction we want to go. So I think, the green port as set out here seems to be in line with those values, and it would be odd and incongruous not to seek to aim for those rather than quickly look for concessions before we've even started the race, sort of thing. But I think on the last point about recommending or contributing 30k towards the development, obviously we've still to determine what exactly is the next step with this. So maybe we need to just sort of allocate the money with the understanding that a paper would come back to confirm that we will in fact use 30k, because we may not want to proceed with great gusto towards a free port if we've got concerns that it's contradictory to what we think is going to benefit in the long term the region and the regional economy in a sort of inclusive and fair way. There's a few other things. I don't know if it's worth touching on them now, just in the appendices. I can come back to that if you want to address that bit first. I suppose it's not really a question, but
I hadn't taken it to be a question. So if you want to highlight the other items that you wanted to discuss, then we'll sort of take them all and take them all on block, so to speak.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah. Yeah, I think in the appendices it talks about more of the detail about setting out the boundary of the sort of Freeport area or Greenport area, and it talks about a 45-kilometre distance. So I think obviously whenever we're developing a sort of detailed bid, we probably have to look at, well, what are we going to include in that, and is there going to be any contrary areas? Presumably it'll be based around Cairnryan. So that's not quite far enough to reach Prestwick, which would obviously be another sort of mode of port which might strengthen a particular bid, if you like. But so maybe that wouldn't be included. But there are concessions within the sort of prospectus that sort of allow for that if you've got the right sort of details. And also we need to be sort of careful about our biospheres and potential park areas and protected areas in Galloway, which might limit what we can and can't do, because we wouldn't want to have certain things in a national park, for example, if that's where one was, that it was actually a sort of tax benefit sort of area. So I think maybe that's something we really need to see the detail about, how all the jigsaw parts fit together in our sort of rural visitor economy, as well as the potential economic drivers that a Greenport would offer. And just a wee point about when we're talking about the UK, Scotland and Great Britain, I think we should mention Northern Ireland. I think it references it being the 6th largest port, and very important to Scotland and Great Britain, but I think it's equally important to Northern Ireland because that's where it goes to, and Northern Ireland is part of the Northern Ireland and Great Britain, which makes up the UK at the moment. So just a wee detail there. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, Stephen, I do take the point. So particularly your latter point, I'm thinking about put a different hat on as a member of the North Channel Partnership. Yes, we should absolutely do that, because in no small part what we're working on with this is very much in parallel with the work that our colleagues in Mid and East Antrim are doing as part of a collective Freeport bid. We're doing these in parallel rather than together, but we're certainly liaising with each other. So I do think that we need to just have a look at including that. I think you're absolutely right. And I'm sure we can do that without any difficulty. Steve, on the wider point about, I suppose, potentially conflicting zones of activity, Freeport or Greenport zone versus other potential designations. Any observations on that, please?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Just a couple of points really on that. First of all, I think the draft guidance on green ports does make it clear that this is very much about sustainable development and an approach to net zero, and that would have to be reflected in terms of the way in which new development is attracted and accommodated. So the starting point for those opportunities would be to look at the sites that are already designated within the local development plan, but are not yet taken up for development. And there will be a number of those that sit within the kind of 45-kilometre radius from Cairnryan. And the detail of that is something that the working group would take forward in the context of developing up a bid proposition. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Steve. Stephen, do you want to come back?
I think it's diameter rather than radius when I read the papers, but I could be wrong.
Okay, that is an important distinction. We'll go to, let me get this right way around. We'll go to Archie next and then to Elaine. Archie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think obviously the allocation of the 30K is to make sure we've got a bid able to go forward. And I don't think it would be helpful to take to another committee, but I think if we agree that today, then a bid can be built up in a short time scale, because we don't know when the full requirements are going to be in place, but it may be next week or the week after, and we need to make sure that we've got that funding allocation available. I think what I wanted to say over and above that is the benefits of this is of course not just to the region, it's to the whole of Scotland, Northern Ireland, as has been said by Stephen and the whole of the UK. I believe it would have a benefit for, and it would put the region in good stead right across our country. But I think the process that we're going through within the report itself, having all those partners, as you suggested earlier on, some worldwide partners in some cases, progress in this bid and moving it forward as and when required. Every good house needs good foundations, and I think this is a good foundation to move forward here, and happy to move forward with that.
Thanks, Archie. No, I think that's an important distinction to draw between the need to make an allocation, a financial allocation today, and I think we need to do that, and the potential, which I hope actually we don't require, for us to reconvene at some point should circumstances change and we need to revisit the matter because they've changed. So I don't know at this point whether or not that will happen. So I simply introduced that to reflect that we would be responsive to events as they develop. But I do agree with you that I think we do need to make the allocation so that we can get the bid worked up. I think that's important. But I should go to Elaine next and then Dougie Campbell. Elaine?
Thanks, Chair. Sorry for I raised my hand rather than using speak. I get confused between different meetings. Can I just support those councillors who said that, that Greenport and Freeport are not interchangeable, and that we would need to come back to consider, if Greenport's not an option, we would want to consider whether or not we wanted to go for Freeport. I think we should allocate the 30k and get on with the bid. But I think we would need to consider whether we would want to go for a model which might not include fair pay or fair wages, and whether or not we wanted to bring in something where actually low wages were encouraged. We know that low wages are actually part of our economic problem, part of economic challenge, and I would be certainly reluctant. I would need to know more about what Freeport actually meant, because if it was a zone where you could get away with not paying people the appropriate wages for their work, I personally wouldn't be in favour of it. So we definitely would have to give that serious consideration if Greenport is not an option.
Thanks, Elaine. And I do think that we would require to bring it back so that any decision was made with the fullest of information. I think that's fundamental. I mean, my hope is, I think we have an excellent bid here and a really good prospect. And the scale and variety of the private sector partners who are interested in this is really significant, and it also highlights this strategically important link between Scotland, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, between the mainland of Britain and the whole island of Ireland. It's absolutely critical. And I think there is so much going for this that I really hope that it's a bit of a no-brainer for it to go forward. But if the facts change, then I think we need to come back and look at them again. And I do agree with you on that. And certainly, I think Vice Chair and I absolutely committed that if we are in that situation, then we need to reconvene and have another look at how things have developed and what we would wish to do next. So I hope that is helpful. And I'll turn to Dougie Campbell next. Dougie.
Thanks, Chair. What I would like to have said has pretty much been said, but I think this is a huge opportunity for Dumfries and Galloway. I don't know if anyone has actually got to the point of calculating how many jobs this could mean, but economically it links brilliantly with their strategic priority, the regional economic strategy that we were talking about earlier. But I think, and I'm glad that there's reference to a just transition and how we can impact on that, because I think this is going to be one of our biggest challenges in Dumfries and Galloway, to make sure that people aren't left behind. And I think it's fantastic. It's a great opportunity for us, and I'm glad that all members across party are supporting it.
Dougie, thanks for that. No, I very much agree that the just transition, and I think this is something that we're going to get a great deal more of, and it's absolutely critical that we get it right. And it's actually as critical here as it is in the northeast of Scotland, for example, with the oil industry. But actually, we might be two very different regions, but the importance of getting just transition right is no less fundamental in my view. I'll pause just to check in case we have any final comments or questions. Claire, everyone content in the chamber?
All content, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. So, members, with that, we will go to the recommendations. So at 2.1, can we note the update on Greenport developments nationally and locally? That's as set out in section 3 of the report. 2.2, can we endorse the current progress on developing a bid concept and expression of interest? That's as in Appendix 1. 2.3, can we agree to progress a bid submission for a green port linked to the ports of Kinryan to the relevant authority and receive a further progress report in November? Thank you, colleagues. And at 2.4, agree to contribute up to £30,000 from the previously agreed Economic Recovery Plan budget allocation towards the costs of specialist external assistance to support partners with the development of the final bid. That's set out in paragraph 3.17. Take it that we are agreed. Okay then, as Councillor Thompson says. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Okay, thank you, members. I think that's a really important decision, and fingers crossed that we are able to progress with this in due course. Item 7 is any other business deemed urgent by the Chair due to the need for a decision. I have not been notified of any urgent business, so I wish to draw this meeting to a close. Thank members for your contributions and your attendance today, particularly members in the chamber for their forbearance with me chairing remotely, which has been much appreciated. Some of you will recognise the reasons I have for needing to chair remotely today, but your tolerance of it has been much appreciated by me. Thank you very much, members.